What? Brock Purdy,
if you're still around,
keeps throwing the ball like he's throwing it today. I may pick Pittsburgh in week 1.
3 interceptions for Brock Purdy is the report from joint practices against the Raiders. Vaunted number 1 defense.
I want to hit this one on the Xfinity Mobile text line. Steiny, I like how the Eagles have one good season and they're the team the Niners need to get by. How about the Eagles need to get by the Niners? How about you take a look at the franchise page for the Eagles? They made the Super Bowl last year. They eliminated the 49ers. Year before they were in the playoffs, they lost a wild card. Year before they didn't make the playoffs. They lost wild card. They've been to the postseason 5 out of the last 6 years. That's more than the Niners. The Eagles have been to the postseason 5 of the last 6 years, and they've got a Super Bowl, which the Niners don't have. So, come on now. Really? Are you 49er fans think they should start the season as a team that you think is better than Philly? You're not better than Philly until you beat Philly or have a better record than Philly or beat them in Week 12 or beat them in the NFC Championship. You're not better than Philly right now.
Well, and that's why the result of last season is kind of the springboard for our conversation about Kyle Shanahan, and would love you to weigh in at 888-957-9570. Is there something at stake this season for Kyle Shanahan? Like, what is at stake? Because I think the injury at quarterback, in a way, kind of press these expectations or move them down the road. Like, okay, so for example, if Brock Purdy, hypothetically, does get hurt last year, the 49ers lose in Philadelphia. Right. Now, they were underdogs, but by 2 points. Pretty even game on the road. Do you think we're at the place that we could be at the end of this season for Kyle Shanahan, which is, like Kyle's got the built-in excuse of his quarterback getting hurt.
Right.
I don't think he could predict who was going to win that game one way or the other. I'm not of the side that the 49ers were going to win that football game. I also don't know if the Philadelphia Eagles were.
Okay.
But this year, if all things are equal and health assumed, if Kyle Shanahan loses in Philadelphia to the Eagles in the NFC Championship, then what happens?
Well, I'm going to assume that the Eagles were 14-3 and the 49ers were 13-4 or something like that.
It plays out the exact same way it did this past year.
What happens at that point?
Yeah,
to me,
what's at stake? You just, that's a good season.
No. What happens at that point is you're very disappointed. You didn't get by Philly. You couldn't get by Philly a year before, and you had a quarterback situation. Fine. Okay, great. You want to say it's a quarterback? We'll say it's a quarterback, so run it back. Well, if you don't do it with the quarterback this year, then what? Then you can't even say, we would have beat Philly with Purdy. No, you wouldn't have. You had Purdy this past year, and the Eagles put you in your place. So, but I do think there's a scenario in which, like, Purdy has a really good year. They just happen to not get over the top against Philly. But Purdy's entrenched as the quarterback because he was really good this year. That's very possible.
But that's also why I feel like I don't feel comfortable saying that Brock Purdy is the quarterback of the future unless the 49ers get to a Super Bowl this year. Like, that, I can't do that. Let me ask you this. If the 49ers get upset at home at any point in the playoffs, let's say they are the ones who go 14-3 or 15-2, they're the 1 seed, they win a playoff game, maybe they lose in the division round, maybe they lose in the NFC Championship to the Eagles at home. Like, if they do have home field advantage and they get what they want, the goal of the season is to have home field in the 1 seed and the bye, and you lose, then what's at stake?
If the San Francisco 49ers make the playoffs and they're 12-5 or better, I'm going to assume that Brock Purdy had a good year. I'm going to assume that Brock Purdy was as good as last year or better. Then he goes into the playoffs, and even if, to me, he has a bad game, oh, no, he stubbed his toe, meaning he threw 2 interceptions, then I think there's only one thing he can do, and that's come back the next year, and Brock Purdy's your quarterback, and you've got to say, hopefully Brock's just going to keep getting better and better and better and better, and eventually we'll beat the Eagles. I don't think if the 49ers go 12-5 and get beat by the Eagles in the NFC Championship, how can you move off Purdy? Because to have gotten back to the NFC Championship, I'm going to have to assume Purdy was pretty good.
But if you're at home, you're going to be the favorite. And then you still, so they went on the road last year, and yes, they lost, and there was injuries. But they were an underdog. If they lost to Philadelphia, it would be a very disappointing season. But in my mind, it can't be a failure. I think there are a lot of people that will look at the 49ers, if they have home field advantage in the playoffs this year, and lose at any point, as this season being a failure. Because your question is, what's at stake for Kyle Shanahan? Right. Well, I don't think his job is at stake.
Wait, did we beat the Eagles?
No, you lost.
Okay.
You didn't get to the Super Bowl.
Okay.
Kyle Shanahan's reputation, in my mind, is what's at stake in that scenario.
Yes.
And that's what's at stake for him this season. His job's not at stake. He's going to be the head coach of the 49ers next year and probably for another few years.
I would agree.
But his reputation is absolutely on the line this season. It's funny to me how...
Well, to me, okay, his reputation's on the line. So what happens again? The Eagles go 14-3, the Niners go 13-4.
No. I'm saying the 49ers lose at home in the playoffs.
To
the Eagles.
Okay. So you had home field.
Yep. And you lost.
So it's the NFC Championship, essentially. I think under that scenario, the only way I can see that happening, or one of the ways I see that happening, is if you're telling me the 49ers had the best record in the NFC, got to the NFC Championship game and lost to the Eagles, I think at that point it'll be obvious that Brock Purdy's pretty good and we can expect him to get better, notwithstanding even if he had a bad NFC Championship game, because he'll still only have 20 pro starts on, 25 starts. You know what I mean? I think, people will be disappointed and people say, that's 4 out of 5 years Kyle Shanahan has gotten to the NFC Championship but can't get over the hump. But he also will be able to say, we absolutely positively have our quarterback of the future.
But
right?
No, see, I don't think you can say if your quarterback of the future.
After a 13-4 or after a 14-3 year and 2 wins, and then really?
And this is something we've talked about, how Kyle Shanahan is somebody that's not going to let his quarterback fail. So, unless Brock Purdy just turns it up and throws 35 touchdowns this year and looks like a dude, I think there's a possibility that Brock Purdy he could be a 65% completion passer, throw 20 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, and they win 14 games.
I'm kind of...
That doesn't scream franchise quarterback to me.
This guy on the text line doesn't get the conversation. He says, if Purdy makes the playoffs and plays decent, he's the guy. I'm kind of with
by
that.
Process of elimination. I don't think that means that he's all of a sudden your quarterback for the next 5 years.
Why wouldn't... Okay, tell me why I'm naive to think that if Brock Purdy quarterbacks the Niners to the best record in the NFC, 2 playoff wins, and they lose in the NFC, I almost look at that as, how could he not be the quarterback moving forward if we had the best record in the regular season, got back to the NFC Championship game, a game which Purdy got hurt in last year, by the way. Now Purdy plays in it, but he stubbed his toe. He's still a young,
I think the example of why is Jimmy Garoppolo.
But Purdy's 25. Garoppolo is
in his late 20s.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks are playing until their mid-30s. Put in the cap, right? Kirk Cousins is going to be the quarterback next year for the 49ers. I know not in this hypothetical we're talking about. Kirk Cousins is 35 years old.
Right.
Jimmy Garoppolo, if he was a franchise quarterback for the 49ers, would have a runway of another 5 or 6 years, and yet he's no longer with the team.
But Purdy's career is just starting.
There's probably the amount of quarterbacks that are going to be franchise guys for their teams for 5 years and beyond, you could count on a hand.
Right. That's why right.
And
That's
you're
why
saying Purdy's one of those guys if they finish this season where they did last year.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Because to me, if this team's going to go 13-4, 14-3, I'm assuming he's quarterbacking 14 of the 17 games. So he's the quarterback most responsible for a 13 or 14 win season. I mean, at that point, think about this for a minute. At that point, Brock Purdy is 20-2 as a starter.
Yeah.
So then you go to the playoffs and he wins 2. So now he's 4-1 as a starter in the postseason. But I got hurt. Like, absolutely, he's going to be the man at that point.
Yeah, and look, if Brock takes us to the playoffs from the 5-1-0, he's our guy. It wouldn't have failed us to date. Why risk moving on to an unknown? I'm not saying you move on from Brock Purdy. I'm just saying that just because he has a great second season doesn't mean that he's Ben Roethlisberger and he's going to be your quarterback for 15 years, which is what it sounds like you are assuming.
5 years. Let's just say 5 years.
So that would put him in year 7.
Something like that.
So like Brock Purdy is basically he's going to finish out certainly his rookie deal. Because he has, even if, I don't know, God forbid another guy comes in.
You kind of seem incredulous that I'm putting 1 and 1 and 1 together. If they go 13-4, if they have the best record in the NFC, they win 2 playoffs games, they lose in the NFC Championship. Yeah, I'm trying to envision a scenario, honestly, in which that happens, and after the season, people are saying, I don't know if Purdy's good enough. I don't think he's good enough. I think at that point, it'll be like, this guy just completed his second year. He's only played 2 years in the league. And, I guess there's a scenario in which he wouldn't be, but I got to think that would almost ensure that he is the guy.
Well, and if Brock Purdy tears it up and he looks like a guy that can be a prolific passer, then I do think you have reason to believe he's your franchise quarterback. But what I'm saying is that I don't believe that Brock Purdy, because of the way this offense is constructed as run first, is going to be one that's going to be either ridiculously good or ridiculously bad. And to me, that's someone who's replaceable.
I got you there.
Like, I think that is someone that you can make the case that, look, if he gets to the NFC champion, even if Brock Purdy makes the playoffs, I'm not saying you move off of him, but I just don't see from what the track record has been at the quarterback position with Kyle Shanahan, not just in San Francisco, but throughout his coordinating career as well. I don't see anything to believe to say, that's going to be the guy for the next 5 years.
I have an answer for you there, and it's a very practical answer, and that is, if you're telling me Brock Purdy's the primary starter for the Niners this year, they go 13-4, 14-3, win 2 playoff games, lose in the NFC Championship game, Brock Purdy will be the franchise quarterback moving forward, if for no other reason than you got him on no money for the next 2 years, essentially.
Yeah, and then you got to pay him.
That's right. Right. Now,
and then his roster gets significantly worse. Like, that's what quarterbacks run into and why it's so hard to win Super Bowls when you don't have a guy on a rookie deal. That's why I think there's so much importance on this season. Because if they don't get it done, I don't see how their roster continues to improve beyond this year when you're going to be paying Nick Bosa probably $35 million a year.
Well,
when you're going to have to pay Brandon Ayuk a ton of money. When you're still paying Kittle, Warner, Debo, McCaffrey. But
there's good news and bad news about the 49ers quarterback position. One is it's uncertain, but 2 is there's a chance that whoever quarterbacks, but Purdy or Lance, there's a chance that 2 years from now they're going to be better quarterbacks than they are now. Like the 49ers still have 2 young quarterbacks capable of getting better. So who's to say Brock Purdy is the quarterback? Again, they lose in the NFC Championship, but it's obvious that this guy gets it. And he's going to be a reliable starter in the NFL and pretty good. Like if he showed it, do you think that if Brock Purdy right this year were to show himself to be like Kirk Cousins, Kyle would take that in a heartbeat right now?
He would.
Yes. Don't you think?
It also means he might not win a Super Bowl.
I don't know if I'd say that. But I hear what you're saying. All I'm saying is, if the 49ers, I can't see a scenario in which the 49ers win 13 or 14 games, a couple playoff games. Purdy's got to be the man at that point, I would think, just using my head about how it must have happened.
Yeah, I don't think he has to earn anything. Like, he doesn't have to earn his starting spot beyond that year, but when you're making the decision about what you're going to pay a quarterback after his rookie deal, like, it's not. So Trey Lance right now is making, I don't know about this season, but next year's cap hit will be like $9 million because he's a first-round pick. He's a top 3 pick.
Mm-hmm.
Brock Purdy doesn't have that cap hit because he's the last person taken in the draft.
Yep.
So if you wanted to pay, if Trey Lance was your hypothetical franchise quarterback, you would have to pay him at least $30 million a year. That's a $20 million pay jump. Brock Purdy, if he is the franchise quarterback for the next 5 years, you're going to have to find $30 extra million at least for just one player. That's got to come from somewhere else.
Aren't we 2 years from that, though?
But we're talking about the result of this season. Like, what's on the line for this year?
Well, he's still got 2 more years after this upcoming season, correct?
But you're saying he doesn't have to prove anything if they make a run through the playoffs.
I mean, okay, right.
I'm talking about what happens if they don't win the Super Bowl, if they don't even get there.
Well, then they bring back Brock Purdy, and he's still under contract for 2 more years at incredibly low money, and they try to hope he gets better, and they keep adding around him and make another run next year.
But I'm saying it's going to be very difficult to continue to add around him.
Why?
Because you're going to be paying Nick Bosa $35 million.
Well, that I understand. You're going to have to do that regardless of who the quarterback is.
And then in another couple of years, you're going to have to pay your quarterback. You might, all these problems aren't going away.
No, but they don't need to be addressed right now. I mean, Brock Purdy's essentially under contract for 3 more years at very little money.
$700,000, $800,000, $900,000.
So if he shows this year, hey, I can quarterback this team to 13-4, win playoff games, get to the NFC Championship. God, there's going to be this issue with the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to have to get over them somehow. But at that point, we got Brock Purdy for at least 2 years. Now, sure, in that period of time, if he regresses, then maybe he won't be the franchise quarterback. But I'd have to bet. I would bet on Brock Purdy. Okay, who's going to be the 49ers starting quarterback in 4 years? Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold, or somebody else? Who would you bet the most on?
Somebody else.
Yeah, see, I would bet on Purdy right now.
Well, he's the leader in the clubhouse.
Exactly, that's the only reason I would bet on him, but that is the reason I would bet on him. How do you think 49er fans would answer that question?
That's a good one. If you had to bet, if you had to put stock into one of those options, Brock Purdy, Trey Lance, Sam Darnold,
let's say even 2 years from now. 2 years from now.
Well, Brock Purdy's going to be here through the end of his rookie deal. But again,
you would think so.
I'm talking about, I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that he's just going to get paid.
I never said that.
I mean, I'm looking at someone like Jared Goff, who was number 1 overall pick for the Rams, got them to a Super Bowl, in fact, made the playoffs in each of the first 2 years with Sean McVay, lost in the first round in McVay's first year, got to a Super Bowl in 2018, and then they eventually told him to hit the pike because they could upgrade the position after they paid him a huge amount of money because he wasn't the guy. He wasn't good. I shouldn't say he wasn't the guy, but he wasn't good enough for them to win a Super Bowl.
Garoppolo.
So no. Jared Goff.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
But the Rams found someone that was good enough to help them win a Super Bowl.
See, the reason I hear you. The reason I think Purdy is the guy is for one important reason. After watching Shanahan run this team for 6 years, it feels like, to me, he has more confidence in Purdy than any of the other quarterbacks who's come through here. And I think that's very important because of the way Shanahan is. Because he just, for whatever reason, I feel like it's hard for him to get on board a quarterback, but he's gotten on board Purdy more than any other quarterback.
More than Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yes, in my mind. And that means knowing Shanahan like I know him, he's going to bend over backwards to make Purdy work, meaning work out.